I decided to surprise my wife at her CEO office with coffee and lunch. At the entrance, there was a sign that said, "Authorized personnel only." When I told the security guard I was Scarlett's husband, he laughed and said, "Sir, I see her husband every day. There he is coming out, right now." My heart sank, but I needed to figure out what was happening. So I decided to play along. Follow my story until the end and comment your city so I can see how far this reaches. I never imagined one simple visit would destroy the life I thought I knew. My name is Sylar Vale. I'm 56 years old, and until that moment, I believed I knew my wife better than anyone in the world. September in Atlanta brought that perfect balance of warmth and crisp air that made you want to do something spontaneous. That Thursday afternoon, I decided to surprise my wife Scarlett at her office. She'd been pulling brutal 12 and 14-hour days as CEO of Summit Solutions, and I figured bringing her favorite vanilla latte and one of my homemade turkey sandwiches might brighten her day. I'd only visited her workplace a handful of times since she'd taken the CEO position 3 years ago. Scarlett always said it was easier to keep work and home separate, and I respected that boundary. Maybe I respected too many boundaries. The Summit Solutions building gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, all glass and steel reaching into the Georgia sky. I pulled into visitor parking, grabbed the coffee and brown bag, and walked toward the entrance feeling oddly nervous. After 28 years of marriage, you'd think I'd be comfortable anywhere my wife spent her time. The lobby was impressive in that intimidating corporate way. Marble floors, chrome fixtures, modern art that cost more than most people's cars. Behind the security desk sat a middle-aged man whose nameplate read Ezra Washington. "Good afternoon," I said, approaching with what I hoped was a confident smile. "I'm here to see Scarlett Monroe. I'm her husband, Sylar." Ezra looked up from his computer screen, his expression shifting from professional courtesy to something I couldn't quite read. He tilted his head slightly, studying my face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You said you're Mrs. Monroe's husband." His voice carried a note of confusion that made my stomach tighten. "Yes, that's right. Sylar Vale." I held up the coffee and bag. I brought her lunch. What happened next still plays in my mind like a movie scene I can't turn off. Ezra's eyebrows shot up and then he laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, bewildered laugh that echoed through the marble lobby. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I see Mrs. Monroe's husband every day. He just left about 10 minutes ago." Ezra gestured toward the elevators with casual certainty. "There he is now, coming back." I turned and watched a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit stride through the lobby. Younger than me, maybe mid-40s, with the kind of confident bearing that seemed to own every room. His dark hair was perfectly styled shoes, polished to a mirror shine. Everything about him screamed success and authority. The man nodded to Ezra with familiar ease. "Afternoon, Ezra. Scarlett asked me to grab those files from the car." "No problem, Mr. Cross. She's in her office." Mr. Cross, Damien Cross. I knew that name from Scarlett's work stories. Her vice president who'd joined 3 years ago. Always mentioned in professional context. Always business. My hands felt numb around the coffee carrier. Everything in me wanted to speak up to correct this massive misunderstanding, but my voice had completely abandoned me. Ezra looked between Damien and me, genuine confusion creasing his features. "I'm sorry, sir, but are you sure you're Mrs. Monroe's husband? Because Mr. Cross here—" "Oh, you must be Damien," I heard myself say, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Scarlett's mentioned you. I'm Sylar, a friend of the family. I was just dropping off some lunch for her." Damien's shoulders relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained watchful. "Nice to meet you." He took the coffee and sandwich from my trembling hands. "She's in meetings most of the afternoon, but I'll make sure she gets this. Just tell her Sylar stopped by." I walked back to my car in a daze, legs moving without conscious direction. The September air felt sharp against my skin, but I barely noticed. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the building through my windshield. 28 years of marriage. 28 years of sharing a bed, a home, dreams and fears, and inside jokes that nobody else understood. 28 years of believing I knew this woman completely. And now I was sitting in a parking lot wondering what the hell had just happened to my life. The familiar sight of our Buckhead home should have been comforting, but as I pulled into the driveway, even the red brick colonial felt different somehow. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it that morning, yet nothing felt the same. Inside, the silence had weight to it. I walked through rooms filled with our shared memories, vacation photos, the ceramic bowls Scarlett had made, in pottery class our wedding picture on the mantel. Had any of it been real? I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, mind replaying the scene at Summit Solutions. There was only one explanation that fit, and I wasn't ready to accept it. The front door opened at 9:30. Scarlett's heels clicked against hardwood keys jangling as she set them on the hall table. Normal sounds of a normal evening, except nothing felt normal anymore. "Sylar, I'm home." Her voice carried that familiar tired warmth. She appeared in the doorway, looking every inch the successful CEO in her tailored navy suit, blonde hair still perfectly arranged. "How was your day?" I asked automatically. She sighed, loosening her jacket. "Exhausting, back-to-back meetings all afternoon." She moved to the refrigerator. "Did you eat already?" "I brought you coffee today," I said carefully. "To your office." Scarlett paused, reaching for a glass. For just a fraction of a second, something shifted in her expression. Then she smiled. "You did? I didn't get any coffee. I gave it to someone named Damien to pass along." Another pause so brief I might have imagined it. "Oh, Damien mentioned someone stopped by. I had meetings all afternoon, so I probably missed it." She poured wine hands perfectly steady. "That was sweet of you." The evening passed in surreal normalcy. We watched news, discussed weekend plans, went through our usual bedtime routine. But underneath a terrible new awareness pulsed like a second heartbeat. As Scarlett slept, I stared at the ceiling. Around 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Once, twice, then a third time. Text messages at 3 a.m. She didn't stir. Next morning, while she showered, her phone lit up again with messages. The screen showed D and a heart emoji. My hands shook as I set it back exactly where I'd found it. After she left for work, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, going through our papers with methodical precision. Her home office revealed nothing suspicious at first. Work papers, letterhead, business cards, everything a CEO should have. But then I found something that made my stomach clench. A restaurant receipt from the Capitol Grill dated 6 weeks ago. $89.25 for 2 people. I remembered that night clearly. Scarlett had told me she was dining with a female client from Portland. The timestamp showed 7:15 p.m. We'd talked that night around 9:30. She'd sounded relaxed, happy, describing her productive client meeting. But this wasn't a business dinner receipt. No alcohol charges for client entertainment. No appetizers or desserts to impress a potential client. Just 2 entrees and wine. The kind of intimate dinner I thought was reserved for us. I sat at the kitchen table holding that piece of paper and felt my world shift again. The woman I'd been married to for 28 years had been lying to me. The question wasn't whether she was having an affair anymore. The question was how long this had been going on and what else I didn't know. Monday morning brought clarity in the way that only a good night's sleep can provide. My accountant's mind had kicked into gear sometime around dawn, organizing the chaos of the past few days into neat columns of facts and uncertainties. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made any decisions that could change my life forever. The first thing I did was research divorce attorneys in Atlanta. Not because I was ready to file papers, but because I needed someone who understood the legal landscape if things went south. After reading reviews and checking credentials, one name kept appearing: Maxine Steele, a partner at Steele & Associates, who specialized in high-asset divorces. Her downtown office occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower on Peachtree Street. The waiting room was elegant, but not ostentatious. Leather chairs, tasteful artwork, the kind of place where serious people discussed serious problems. Maxine herself was exactly what I'd expected from her online bio. Mid-50s, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, but her handshake was firm and her smile genuine. "Mr. Vale, what can I do for you?" I sat across from her mahogany desk and carefully explained the incident at Summit Solutions. The restaurant receipt, Scarlett's subtle reactions to my questions. Maxine listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "How long have you been married?" she asked when I finished. 28 years. "Any previous infidelity issues?" "None that I knew of." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Mr. Vale, what you're describing could be innocent coincidences, or it could be something more serious. Before we discuss your legal options, I think you need more information." "What kind of information?" "The kind that only a professional investigator can provide." She reached for her phone. "I work with several private investigators, but for something like this, I'd recommend Jackson Rivers. He's former FBI, specializes in corporate investigations, and he's absolutely discreet." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Jack Rivers' office in a converted warehouse in Virginia Highland. The space was modern but functional. Multiple computer monitors, filing cabinets, a wall covered with certificates and commendations from his bureau days. Jack himself was younger than I had expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of focused intensity that made you believe he could find anything. Maxine filled me in on the basics, he said, settling behind his desk. Tell me about your wife's routine. For the next hour, I found myself providing details I'd never consciously cataloged. Scarlett's work schedule, her travel patterns, the names she mentioned from the office. When I got to Damien Cross, Jack made a note. How long has he been with the company? 3 years, I think, since around the time Scarlett became CEO. And you said the security guard recognized him as her husband. That's what it sounded like. Jack nodded, making more notes. Here's what I can do. Financial analysis, credit cards, bank statements, any unusual expenditures, digital footprint, social media email patterns if we can access them legally, physical surveillance when necessary. The goal is to establish whether there's a relationship beyond professional, and if so, the scope and timeline. How long does something like this take? Depends what we find. Could be a week, could be a month. I'll update you regularly, but I need you to act completely normal at home. Don't confront. Don't ask leading questions. Don't change your behavior in any way that might tip her off. We discussed his retainer. More money than I'd ever spent on anything except my house and car, but somehow that seemed irrelevant now. We established communication protocols, encrypted emails, a dedicated phone number, regular check-ins. As I walked back to my car, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time since Thursday afternoon, I wasn't just reacting to events. I had a planned professional help, and most importantly, I was taking control of a situation that had been controlling me. Whatever Scarlett was hiding, I was going to find out, and then I'd decide what to do about it. 3 weeks later, Jack's call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports for a client. The tone in his voice told me everything before he said a word. We need to meet, he said simply. I have findings. An hour later, I sat across from Jack in his Virginia Highland office, watching him spread photographs across his desk like a dealer laying out cards. Each image felt like a small punch to the gut. These were taken over the past 2 weeks. Jack explained, his voice professionally neutral. Riverside Commons, a luxury apartment complex on the Chattahoochee River. The first photo showed Scarlett and Damien walking into the building together, his hand on the small of her back. The second showed them leaving the next morning, Damien carrying what looked like a gym bag. The third captured them on a balcony sharing coffee and what appeared to be an intimate conversation. They're not just meeting there, Jack continued, sliding the document across the desk. They're living there. I stared at the lease agreement. Riverside Commons Unit 3F14. Tenant names Damien Cross and Scarlett Monroe. Relationship status, married couple. My hands shook as I held the paper. Married couple. Gets worse, Jack said, producing financial records. Monthly rent is $2,800. Security deposit was $5,600. All paid from the joint checking account you contribute to. The numbers hit like physical blows. While I'd been depositing paychecks into our shared account, thinking I was supporting our future, Scarlett had been using that money to fund a completely separate life. I can get inside, Jack offered. I have a contact in building maintenance. But given the personal nature, you might want to see for yourself. The drive to Riverside Commons took 25 minutes through Atlanta traffic. The complex was everything I'd expected. Upscale modern where successful young professionals lived. The kind of place Scarlett and I could never afford except, apparently we were affording it. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, Damien's silver Mercedes pulled into the covered garage. He emerged carrying grocery bags and dry cleaning, moving with casual familiarity of someone coming home. After he disappeared into the building, I sat building courage for what I was about to do. Jack's maintenance contact had been cooperative for the right price. The elevator ride to the third floor felt endless. Unit 314 sat at the end of a carpeted hallway, numbers that would forever be burned into my memory. The keycard worked smoothly. The door opened onto a life I never knew existed. This wasn't some temporary meeting place for secret encounters. This was a home, a fully furnished, lived-in home with throw pillows on the couch, books on shelves, family photos on the mantel. Photos of Scarlett and Damien looking like the happy couple I thought we were. In the bedroom, Scarlett's clothes hung beside Damien's in a shared closet. Her perfume sat on the dresser next to his cologne. The bathroom held 2 toothbrushes. Her contact solution, the expensive face cream she'd claimed, was too costly to replace 6 months ago. But the kitchen destroyed me completely. Coffee mugs in the sink, 2 of them lipstick on one rim. A grocery list in Scarlett's handwriting stuck to the refrigerator, with a magnet from Savannah, a trip I'd never taken with her. Fresh flowers in a vase, the kind of domestic touch that spoke of permanence, not affair. I moved through the apartment like a ghost cataloging evidence of complete life replacement. This wasn't just betrayal. This was systematic deception on a scale I couldn't have imagined. On the kitchen counter, a manila folder caught my eye. Written across the tab in Scarlett's careful script, future plans. I reached for it with trembling hands, then stopped. Whatever was inside would change everything, and once I knew, I could never unknow it. The folder's contents spilled across the kitchen counter like pieces of a puzzle I'd never wanted to solve. Real estate listings for houses in Buckhead and Virginia Highland, all under Damien's name. Vacation brochures for destinations I'd never heard Scarlett mention: Napa Valley, Martha's Vineyard, the Hamptons. A detailed business expansion plan showing Damien as CEO and Scarlett as president of Summit Solutions. But beneath these documents lay something that stopped my heart cold. Consultation papers from Morrison and Associates, the same law firm that had handled our will updates 5 years ago. The summary detailed Scarlett's meetings over the past 4 months to discuss optimal divorce strategies for high-asset individuals. Her approach was laid out with surgical precision. File for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and emotional abandonment. Establish a pattern of my alleged unavailability using what they called lifestyle incompatibility evidence. My quiet evenings would become social isolation. My satisfaction with my accounting practice would be painted as lack of ambition. My contentment with our life would be reframed as inability to support her growth. The timeline revealed the true scope of her calculation. 2 years of planning, 2 years of documenting my supposed inadequacies, while I believed we were building a future together. I photographed every page, then replaced everything exactly as found. The apartment felt contaminated now, this shrine to their deception that I'd been unknowingly funding. Back at Maxine's office, I spread the photos across her mahogany desk. She's been building a legal case for 2 years, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Maxine studied the documents, shaking her head. This level of premeditation is unusual even for contested divorces. My phone buzzed. Jack Rivers. Corporate investigation is complete, he announced when I answered. Your wife has given Damien authority that requires board approval, authority he doesn't legally possess. She's restructured company hierarchy to benefit him personally, which violates her fiduciary duties. The board knows about their relationship, Maxine asked. Negative. Classic conflict of interest violation. Plus, I've documented the financial trail. Marital funds paying for their apartment dinners, even a weekend in Asheville you never took. The pieces clicked together with devastating clarity. While I'd been contributing 80% of my income to our joint account, believing I was investing in our marriage, Scarlett had been systematically draining those funds to build a replacement life. We're looking at multiple violations, Maxine said, reviewing her notes. Adultery, financial fraud, corporate misconduct, and conspiracy to defraud in divorce proceedings. What's our move? We file first and fast. Present evidence before she can execute her character assassination strategy. And we contact Summit Solutions board chairman immediately. Remington Chase. I said, remembering the name from company events. Perfect. Corporate boards take fiduciary violations seriously, especially when personal relationships compromise business decisions. As I drove home through Atlanta traffic, my mind processed the magnitude of what I'd uncovered. This wasn't a marriage that had gradually deteriorated. This was a systematic replacement operation conducted by someone who'd spent 2 years studying my weaknesses while planning my destruction. Scarlett had built her entire strategy around one fundamental assumption, that I would remain the passive, accommodating husband who'd spent 28 years putting her needs first. The quiet accountant who cleaned up her messes and provided stable support while she pursued bigger dreams. She'd calculated every variable except one. What would happen when that same methodical, detail-oriented mind that made me successful in business was turned toward protecting myself instead of protecting her. The woman who'd been planning my replacement was about to learn that she'd seriously misjudged her opponent. Tomorrow the real game would begin. The following Saturday morning found Scarlett at our kitchen table in her pale yellow robe, sipping coffee from her favorite mug while scrolling through her phone. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating what should have been a peaceful domestic scene. She looked beautiful, I realized with a sharp pang. refreshed content completely at ease. It was the perfect picture of innocent domesticity, and it was all a lie. I walked into the kitchen carrying the thick manila folder containing evidence of her double life. The folder that would end everything we'd pretended to build together. "Good morning," she said without looking up, probably reading messages from Damien. I set the folder on the table between us with deliberate precision. The sound made her glance up, and I watched her expression shift from casual attention to sharp awareness. "We need to talk, Scarlett." She set down her coffee mug slowly, eyes never leaving the folder. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something changed in her face. The loving wife, the concerned partner, simply disappeared. "What's this about?" she asked. But her voice lacked confusion. She knew exactly what this was about. "I know about Riverside Commons," I said quietly. "I know about Damien. I know about the divorce, planning the corporate violations, everything." Scarlett leaned back, studying me with new interest. When she spoke again, the mask was completely gone. "How much do you know?" Not denial, not shock, not even anger. Just a practical inquiry about the extent of my discovery, as if we were discussing a business problem. I opened the folder and began laying out evidence methodically. Photographs of her and Damien at their apartment. Financial records showing our joint funds paying for their life together. The lease agreement listing them as married. The divorce consultation papers outlining her strategy to destroy my reputation. With each document, Scarlett relaxed further. She was calculating processing, deciding how to handle this unexpected development. "You've been thorough," she said when I finished. "I'm impressed. 28 years of marriage, Scarlett. This is how you end it." She sighed, a sound of mild irritation rather than distress. "Sylar, let's not be dramatic. We both know this marriage has been over for years. We both know." My voice rose despite efforts to stay calm. "I didn't know anything. I thought we were happy." Her laugh was short and humorless. "Happy? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When did you last show interest in my career, my goals, and anything beyond your accounting practice and quiet evenings? I've always supported your career. I've always been proud of what you accomplished." "You've been passive," she corrected, voice taking on the sharp edge she used with underperforming employees. "Content to let me carry the financial burden, the social obligations, the responsibility for actually building a life worth living." Each word felt like a carefully aimed dart. "If you felt that way, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me what you needed? I tried, Sylar. Every time I brought up traveling more, expanding your practice, moving to a better neighborhood, you found excuses. You were always perfectly satisfied with exactly what we had. So you decided to replace me instead of work with me." Her expression softened slightly, but not with affection. It was the patience she might show a slow student. "I didn't set out to replace you. I met Damien 3 years ago when he joined Summit Solutions. He was everything you're not. Ambitious, dynamic, interested in building something bigger. At first professional respect, then friendship, then more." When the question came out barely audible. "About 2 years ago, Damien closed his first major deal. We celebrated and talked until 3 a.m. about dreams, plans, the life we wanted to build. Most stimulating conversation I'd had in years. I searched her face for any trace of the woman I'd thought I'd married. And that justified 2 years of lies. I wasn't lying, Sylar. I was protecting you from reality you weren't ready to face. Our marriage was already over. You just didn't want to see it." The circular logic was dizzying. She'd been unfaithful, deceptive, manipulative, but somehow I was the one being examined. "Do you love him?" I asked, surprising myself. Her expression softened for the first time during our conversation, but not in a way that offered comfort. "I do. I love Damien in a way I never loved you. He challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better. With him, I feel alive instead of just existing. You have no idea what you've set in motion, Scarlett." Monday morning arrived with crisp Atlanta air that made decisive action feel inevitable. I sat in my home office at 7 a.m. staring at the phone number I'd memorized. Remington Chase, chairman of Summit Solutions Board of Directors. The call that would change everything lasted 12 minutes. "Mr. Chase, this is Sylar Vale. I need to bring serious corporate governance issues to your attention regarding Summit Solutions." "What kind of issues?" His voice carried wariness. "The kind that could expose the company to significant liability. Issues involving unauthorized restructuring, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and fiduciary violations by your CEO." The silence stretched. "We need to meet. Today." By 10 a.m. I was in the Summit Solutions boardroom. Remington Chase matched his corporate bio. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, built his reputation on demanding honest answers. I laid out evidence with methodical precision, photographs of Scarlett and Damien's domestic arrangement, financial records showing company restructuring benefiting Damien without board approval, documentation of their personal relationship creating massive conflicts of interest. Jesus Christ, Remington muttered, studying the lease agreement. She's been giving him CEO-level authority while we thought he was just VP. Shareholders have no idea their CEO is romantically involved with someone she's systematically promoted beyond his authorized scope. Remington's jaw tightened. This ends today. The board moved with corporate efficiency. Emergency session Wednesday morning. By noon, Damien Cross was terminated for undisclosed conflicts of interest, incompatible with fiduciary responsibilities. Company car repossessed Thursday. Corporate credit cards canceled. Access permanently revoked. Security escorted him out with a cardboard box. The classic executive walk of shame. Scarlett fared slightly better. The board placed her on administrative probation with severely restricted authority. A newly appointed COO would oversee her every move for 18 months. The woman who'd built her identity around professional power was now working under closer supervision than she'd experienced in 20 years. Meanwhile, Maxine Steele executed our legal strategy with surgical precision. We filed for divorce Thursday, presenting comprehensive evidence that left Scarlett's attorney speechless. My client strongly advises accepting the proposed settlement, her lawyer told Maxine. Fighting this would be inadvisable given the documentation. Asset division reflected financial reality rather than Scarlett's original plans. I kept our Buckhead house, which my contributions had largely funded. She retained retirement accounts and half our savings, minus documented amounts spent maintaining her secret life. But real satisfaction came from watching professional consequences ripple through Atlanta's business community. Corporate boards communicate and word spread quickly about the CEO who'd compromised her company for personal relationships. Damien found himself blacklisted from executive positions throughout the Southeast. Within a month, he'd accepted regional management with a smaller Charlotte firm, significant step down in salary and prestige. The ambitious VP, who'd seemed destined for bigger things, was now managing accounts for a company 1/10 Summit Solutions size. Strain showed in their relationship immediately. What had seemed like grand love affair when secret and exciting became ordinary when subjected to external pressure and reduced circumstances. Their Riverside Commons lease was quietly terminated. Damien moved to Charlotte alone. Scarlett relocated to a modest one-bedroom near her office, far from the luxury lifestyle she'd funded with our joint resources. The woman who'd spent 2 years planning my replacement while maintaining our marriage facade now lived exactly the kind of reduced circumstances she'd accused me of accepting. 6 months after that Saturday confrontation, I realized the most profound justice comes not from revenge, but from simply refusing to enable someone who's been systematically betraying you. Scarlett had built her strategy on assuming I'd remain passive, predictable, manageable. She'd discovered too late how wrong that assumption had been. The morning ritual had become sacred to me. Brewing coffee in my downtown loft, watching Atlanta wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows, I'd chosen myself. Everything in this space reflected choices I'd made for my own happiness, not to accommodate someone else's ever-changing demands. My accounting practice occupied the ground floor of the same building. Clients appreciated the convenience, but more importantly, they respected the man who'd quietly rebuilt his life after exposing one of Atlanta's biggest corporate scandals. Success felt different when it wasn't shadowed by someone else's dissatisfaction. The evening art classes at Emory had become a highlight of my week. Renaissance painting, something Scarlett would have dismissed as impractical. Now I understood that her constant need for everything to serve some larger ambition had slowly strangled my natural curiosity about beauty, about learning for its own sake. My phone rang during breakfast on a Tuesday morning. Scarlett's name on the screen. First contact since our final court appearance. Sylar, I know I have no right to call. Her voice carried a weariness I'd never heard before. Gone was the crisp confidence of the CEO who'd once planned my systematic replacement. I keep thinking about what you said that Saturday morning, about choosing deception over communication. She paused. You were right. About everything. What happened with Damien I asked, though I suspected I already knew. We lasted 2 months in Charlotte. Turns out when you build a relationship on secrets and stolen moments, There's not much left when you're just ordinary people trying to make it work. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd thrown away nearly 3 decades of real partnership for something that couldn't survive 8 weeks of everyday reality. I lost my job last week, she continued. The board finally decided my administrative probation wasn't working out. Damien's been blacklisted from every major firm in the Southeast. We destroyed each other's careers for what turned out to be nothing more than an elaborate fantasy. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only a profound sadness for the waste of it all. I called because I need you to know something, she said. That morning when you confronted me when I tried to blame you for being emotionally unavailable, I was lying to myself as much as to you. The truth is, you were the most emotionally available person I've ever known. You gave me everything you had, and I convinced myself it wasn't enough because I was too selfish to appreciate it. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserved better than what I gave you. Because someone needs to say out loud that you were a good husband and I was the problem. And because, her voice broke slightly, because I hope someday you'll find someone who values what I was too blind to see. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the strange mathematics of loss and gain. A year ago, I'd believed my happiness depended on keeping someone who was so actively planning my destruction. Today, I woke up excited about my Renaissance art lecture, about dinner with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, about the simple pleasure of reading without someone sighing dramatically about my lack of ambition. At 56, I'd learned the difference between being loved and being tolerated, between partnership and performance, between contentment and settling. The man who'd once measured his worth by how well he could anticipate and meet someone else's needs, now understood that his greatest value lay in his capacity for honesty, loyalty, and genuine affection, qualities that had made him vulnerable to exploitation but also capable of authentic happiness. I finished my coffee and prepared for another day in my beautifully uncomplicated life, grateful for the betrayal that had set me free. Looking back on this journey, I realized God had a plan even when I couldn't see it. 28 years I spent trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. Don't make my mistake. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't excuse the lies. And don't sacrifice your self-worth for someone who doesn't value what you bring to the table. This true story taught me that sometimes God closes one door to open another. When Scarlett walked out of my life, I thought I was losing everything. Instead, I discovered who I really was beneath all those years of trying to please someone who was planning my replacement. Grandpa stories like mine aren't just about heartbreak. They're about finding the strength to rebuild when everything falls apart. The hardest lesson: love shouldn't require you to become smaller, quieter, or less than who you are. A real partner celebrates your contentment, doesn't resent it. They choose honest conversation over elaborate deception. At 56, I learned that being alone with integrity beats being together with someone who's living a lie. Grandpa stories often carry wisdom earned through pain. My true story is simple. Never let anyone convince you that your loyalty, your honesty, your capacity for genuine love are weaknesses. These qualities made me vulnerable to betrayal? Yes, but they also made me capable of authentic happiness once I stopped giving them to the wrong person. God works in mysterious ways. Sometimes He allows us to lose what we think we need so we can find what we actually deserve. True story. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me ended up saving my life. Grandpa's stories don't always have fairy tale endings, but the best ones teach us that sometimes losing everything is exactly what we needed. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own experiences. Have you ever discovered that losing someone was actually a blessing in disguise? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that inspire and heal. Your support helps us reach people who need these messages most.